Hello again, and welcome back to the Love and Truth podcast, where great communication and pretty much great conversations thrive on here. I am so excited about today because I have my host, which is my wonderful husband, and we also have a surprise guest, and we're going to get into him in a minute. But before that, I want to thank you guys for tuning in again for another episode. Also, you can find us on YouTube. Please go like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification bell for future uploads. So, what I want to do is get right into this.
Okay.
Okay? I want to introduce to you my wonderful husband,
Oh,
James Nelson.
all right.
And what I want to do is give a quick bio because I am interviewing him and our surprise guest today. So let's jump right into
Okay, we're just
who
gonna jump into it.
James Nelson is.
Let me hear it.
He's the author of The Six C's of Leadership, How to Gain Commitment and Buy In Early. He is a leadership coach, passionate mentor with over 25 years of experience developing
Okay.
high performing teams from an early age. James learned to overcome adversity and cultural barriers, shaping his mission to inspire and equip the next generation of leaders. Certified John Maxwell trainer and mentor, James empowers individuals through transformative coaching and leadership development. He also served on the board of Academia in Motion's AIM, a nonprofit dedicated to preparing middle and high school students for college and leadership success. And he is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
1-9.
Okay.
Oh, 6.
Okay. All right. We had to do that. And so thank you for being a part of this
Well, yeah.
today. This great subject that we're about to talk about. We'll talk about that in a minute. And next, last but not least, a man that wears many hats, a man that's well known and influential in the city of Houston, Texas, Demetrius Walker. He is a serial entrepreneur, author, speaker, and DJ. He co-founded the Black Travel Club, an Instagram community with over 315,000 followers, and now introduces many to veganism through Meek's Vegan Pizza. And you guys better go try it. We'll talk about that later. Based in Houston, Demetrius is a proud father and a graduate of the Taft School, Vanderbilt University, BA Economics, and a nonprofit management program at Texas A&M. As a global speaker, Demetrius has toured with extreme entrepreneurship and spoken at universities nationwide through great Black speakers. His work has been featured on BET, NBC, and in publications like Incorporated Magazine, Black Enterprise, Bloomberg, and the Houston Chronicle, baby. In 2017, he published his first book, I Am a Black Man. Welcome today to Love and Truth Podcast, James Nelson, and we call him Meek, but Demetrius Walker. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Baby, that's a good intro right there. Like I'm your husband. I'm like, that felt real good.
Yeah.
It felt
Yeah.
It's good.
good? Well, I'm glad. So, I'm glad that you enjoyed that because our this topic today about fatherhood unfiltered. This is something that I think that touches a lot of people. Period. Men, sons, fathers, brothers, everybody actually. So I want people today to hear just the impact that you make as a father to your sons, as we have fathers here today, they're going to speak on their sons, and even having bonus kids, because all of this is important. So let's start here. Who are you as a father? And what I would like to do is I would like to start with Meek. Who are you as a father?
First and foremost, thank you for having me on. I felt the high vibration as soon as I walked in the room.
Yeah.
So,
Alright.
I'm grateful for what you're offering to the community with your podcast. But to answer your question, who am I as a father? I'm somebody who's trying to heal generational wounds. The main focus of my book, I'm a Black Man, was me coming to the realization that I had daddy issues. And that was the premise behind me writing the book. And when I became a father, my whole goal was to everything that I thought could have been done better during my childhood. I wanted to make sure I got correct with my son. And that's easier said than done because children are so dynamic. And the main reason we're here is for the purposes of evolution, a new creation. And so you cannot dictate, your child's attitude, personality, likes, dislikes. And so it's a lot more difficult once you're on this side, the daddy side.
Yeah.
So I'm not a perfect father at all. I just left my shop where my son is working the front desk. And, we got into it about 3 times already today.
Already today.
So, I can't pretend that I'm a perfect dad. I just want to make sure I'm showing up every day
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that I'm in my son's life every day and that he, can rely on me for advice, whatever it is, that he knows that I'm there, whether or not we're seeing eye to eye.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And husband,
Yes.
tell
Well,
me what you think about that question.
well, I want to say this
Sure.
first and foremost. What you just shared, he left the shop to come over to spend time with us. So
He did.
again, definitely appreciate you taking the time out. This is a busy brother.
Well, what shop did he actually leave?
Oh, Veek's Vegan Pizza.
That's where
If
he
you're in
left.
Houston, listen. If you're in Houston, you gotta go to Veek's, Meek's Vegan Pizza.
Have to go. A must.
Listen, we were there a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into the menu. You can talk about all of that, but you got to try it.
He
It's
never
one of-
misses.
Listen, it's one of those spots that when you come to the city,
Yes.
you got to go to. And so answering the question about me as a father, I think, like Meek, building on the generation, right? There were some things that I didn't receive growing up. My dad was there, but not present.
Got you.
He was around until he and my mom were divorced, but just really being present, that wasn't the case. Learned some things just through observation, but not really present. So for me, what I purposed to do as a father was to be present, right? To be active, to create an environment where my kids had a chance, they had a shot, that they understood some of the struggles that I went through, but I didn't want them to go through the same struggles. So for me, it was about being present, about modeling what it means to be a man, a father, to how to move and operate in society effectively. And so for me, it was about being a present provider.
Okay. So just for clarity for our viewers, what I would like to back up with is, how old is your son, Meek?
He's 13.
He's 13.
Yeah.
And James, our children,
32.
and
What?
all their ages.
Oh, well, okay, I'm thinking
Yeah,
about the
we're gonna-
sons. So,
yeah,
32, 32s, son and daughter 32, 27, and then 24?
23.
23.
Yeah.
23.
Yeah. So, that was important because now, it gives our viewers that so that they understand we're talking about some different generations here.
Right.
But being a good father is not missed. I don't care how old our children are, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to do, I want to back up, and you started to touch on it, James, but I want to ask Meek. You touched on it as well. How did you grow up? What did your father impart or didn't impart to you to mold where you are to be a father today?
Yeah, I have a similar story to you, James. With my dad being there, he was always within arm's distance, but in terms of being emotionally present, different story. And so, I realized as I was making certain decisions as an adult, I had to step back and say, why am I doing these things? Why am I, treating women the way that I'm treating them?
Yeah.
Why am I moving the way that I'm moving? And I was 35 in my career. I was working for a travel company out by the Galleria, and I could not be productive as an employee. And I realized I had this emotional block And I took 18 months off from working. I wrote this book. This book was basically therapy for me. And all of those feelings from childhood came up about me wishing that my dad was emotionally present, not just around, but actually invested in, how I felt about things, and making sure that I understood what a man is supposed to do in certain
Right.
situations. And so, you know, realizing that first and foremost, once I became a dad, that I could not necessarily hold my father accountable for what he did not know.
Right.
And
Good.
coming to peace with that, and then trying to move forward with the relationship and build upon the relationship that I wish I had, but my dad is still alive. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to, make things in the image that we so desire. And my dad will be down here next week for Father's Day.
Okay.
He's coming down for the Wu-Tang concert.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
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 yeah. So my dad was one of the very first DJs
Mm-hmm.
in New York City.
Okay.
I grew up in New York City. My dad, Brooklyn and the Bronx, and back during the foundational days of hip hop,
Wow.
he was in the streets, DJing and throwing parties, going to parties. So he's one of the foundational elements of hip hop as a whole.
Okay.
Whether or not he receives the credit or recognition that he deserves. And so that's part of the reason why I'm a DJ,
Yeah.
is because I wanted to be like my dad.
Yeah.
Wow.
And just having turntables in the house, and you know I was quietly, or being trained without my knowledge, just hearing how he did his thing
Mm-hmm.
and how it was supposed to go. And so even though my dad didn't have the patience to teach me, I ended up learning on my own. And those foundational elements from my childhood, are pretty prominent in my DJ career now. So I know I went off on a tangent, but
No, it's okay.
yeah, being present, is emotionally present, is absolutely critical. And I try to make sure my son is aware that I'm emotionally present, even though he kind of has a wall up sometimes and it's hard for
Yeah.
me to break it down. But, I think that's critical.
That's awesome. That was a good answer. Um,
I want to piggyback
yeah, I
off of
want
that
you to.
because something that when you hear people's stories and the similarities in terms of growing up, right? And so the observation,
Right.
right? It wasn't like my dad sat me down and taught me the things of life.
Right.
And quite honestly, my dad passed a few years ago, and I'm just hearing things from my mom about my dad. I'm like, yo, if I'd have what?
Yeah.
If I'd have known that, and we'll get into some of that in a little bit, but now I see why I responded to certain scenarios and situations the way I did. But what I did pick up from my dad, just this patience. My dad was always calm, and outside of the times we would get an extension cord or belt. I mean, but other than that,
Yeah.
like my dad was real calm, tempered, personality out the way. My family, even after my parents' divorce, my mom's family still loved my dad. He was still like family. His personality, just how he engages people, sense of humor. My wife will tell you this all the time. I'll just say some off the wall stuff, and honestly, that's how my dad was. He was just, but he was also strong and militant. He was a member of the Black Panther Party back in the day. So that strength and just being able to stand firm in situations, I observed that energy, but it wasn't really taught, if that makes sense. So
Yes.
so just seeing certain characteristics and traits, and my mom would say, "Well, you're just like your dad." I think my mom has even said that to you on occasion. But being that present dad and trying to manage, I didn't know about the emotional side of it because I didn't get that part of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I had to trip into and try to learn and figure that out dealing with kids,
All right.
and not being as hard from a disciplinarian standpoint. I didn't really do that like I probably I could have balanced that a little bit more.
Okay. Okay. Well, those are some good answers, and I what I heard from both of you is that you may not have had probably the foundational piece of a father as you wanted, but it sounds like you both made a decision to say, I'm going to do better than that. You saw where there was that disconnect, where there was that distance, and you said, well, you know what, with my son, I'm gonna be the bridge to shorten that distance. I'm gonna move differently.
Right.
Now the Bible talks about training up a child in the way that they should go, and they won't be led astray, right? And that's really rough oftentimes when you haven't been trained correctly, right?
Right.
So my question to you is, um, how and we'll start with you, Meek. How important is it, and just what I said, you not seeing that, how important is it for you to make sure that your son is raised in a manner and maybe better than you were? And what does that look like?
It's a continual process. You know, the most important thing for me, the thing that I value most that I can directly trace back to my father is my intellectual curiosity. You know, my dad has always, been curious about things and not afraid to find books to, delve into the details and the mechanics behind why things are the way they are. And that's one thing I'm trying to make sure that I instill in my son is the intellectual curiosity. And sometimes I get frustrated with him because I'm like, don't you want to know more about this? And he's like, nah, I don't care. I was in love with school. I went to school to show the teachers they were wrong. So I went to school to compete, to be at the top of my class, and make sure everybody knew I was the smartest one. And my son doesn't have that same enthusiasm for school that I did, and that can be frustrating. But just continuing to make sure that he's aware of how important education is, because looking back, just my family historically, education is the key to us really changing our family's trajectory long term.
Correct.
And we had some shortcomings there were some missed opportunities. My father could have been an engineer. He had a scholarship to Cornell University, Ivy League school,
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
and opted to go into the Navy instead.
Okay.
And so who knows how his trajectory might have changed or been different had he taken that opportunity to go to Cornell. But life is just a series of learning opportunities, and so making those observations and making sure that my son is aware of what I've seen not only in my life, but my father's life and my father's father's life.
Okay.
So that's really the key with him is you don't realize how good you got it, but I'm trying to make sure that you realize you have to be disciplined in these areas, because if you're not, I know where it can lead.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Would you like to piggyback on that?
Yeah. I think that's one of the challenges of fatherhood in our generation is like we, we're we're close enough to how it was before, right? Coming out of the civil rights and Reconstruction and all of it, we have an awareness of the history of how we got to this point, and so we moved a little bit differently, and trying to get to that next level. I was the first to graduate in my family from college. And so I understood the importance of education. We couldn't afford to, my parents couldn't afford for me to go to college, to pay for me to go to college. So I put my energy into, my academics and sports. And so I was able to earn a full scholarship, right? Um, and I understood the importance of being a student athlete.
Okay.
And I really understood that my sophomore year when I failed a semester and I was ineligible and I couldn't play. And my coach was extremely upset with me. The team was, we were in the playoffs and I was ineligible. And so that was a big disappointment for me. So I focused on being okay. Yeah, I love basketball, but I need to be solid in my academics. And so I focused the last couple of years. And so just trying to explain to my kids I'm not saying you have to be like me, but understand all the choices and the decisions you have in front of you. Education is important, right? Sometimes they don't really listen to that.
No, they don't.
And then me having to navigate in corporate America for the most part of my career, being the only black senior leader in most of the organizations that I worked in. And so understanding how to navigate without compromising. And so I'm trying to impart those things. And actually, my son picked it up. He's a regional manager at UPS up in Virginia. And so, you know, for a while, I mean, he picked up these things, didn't go to school,
Right.
but he picked it up from me to see how I move corporately.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But still maintaining my core values and strengths. So it's just, you know, as a father, you want them to do better than you,
Yes.
but you also have to let them choose their path.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So would you guys agree that when you do train them up in the way that they should go, you might not see it, because I think that we believe to see, we don't see to believe. So it's just, I got to believe that, you know, God is going to, that which I'm imparting or have imparted, have taught, have trained, that they're going to grab that at some point. Because we know, even in corporate America, I don't care what you're doing, entrepreneurship, you have to, there's a continuous retraining that we have to do for people, right?
Yeah.
We have to sometimes keep saying things over and over. When I went in the restroom here, it just told people what not to put in the toilet. We have to keep telling people things that we think that they know, right?
Yep.
But do you guys believe that at some point, all of that you have imparted, they'll grab it?
So I'll say this: the most gratifying thing to me as a father is when I see or hear that my son has done something that I taught him,
Yeah.
and someone else has witnessed or observed it, and they come back to me and say, "Man, your son
Yeah.
did this, man." And I'm like, "All right, fantastic,"
Yeah.
you know, because even though me and him get into it on a regular basis, I know that it's subconsciously seeking in, you know, and he's actually going out into the world and performing the way that I would like to see him perform,
Yeah.
you know, and so that's super gratifying. Not to say that it's an ego thing for me, because he is his own person. I do want him to, you know, be different than me and attack the world from different angles that I possibly couldn't see, things that were in my blind spot. But when it comes to being polite to people, you know, being a good man, being a good person, those kind of things, when I see him executing and he's holding the door for somebody,
Yeah.
you know, he's making sure that the trash is taken out, that women ain't touching the trash, that,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
those kind of things that, you know, I see are rubbing off without me having to remind him, you know, that's super gratifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm jump on that too because it's
Okay.
not even an ego thing, right? I think it's more you're just proud to see.
Yeah.
It's like, you know
Yeah.
what? Damn, I didn't think he was gonna. I mean, hey, that was a moment in time. Was like, I don't know, man.
I don't know if they're gonna make it.
I don't know. I just don't. And your son is what, 13?
13.
13. So I remember that 18, 19, 20 is like, yo, bro, what are you gonna do, man? Because I'm not seeing any fruits of these seeds that have been planted. I just don't know what.
Scary. It's scary.
You-
Yeah.
and so, you know, of course, pivoting, you know, him having his own kids, transitioning, moving from Houston to Georgia and now to Virginia, and so when we were talking, and I'm hearing how he's dealing with situations, how he's responding to, and this is in a corporate setting. You know what I mean? Being challenged, and I'm listening to the thought process and the articulation of it, and I'm like, yeah, he picked something up,
Right.
because that sounds exactly like how I would handle the
Yeah.
situation. So, and that's for all the kids, not just his son, but you know, our daughters and even our youngest. When you just said something the other day, and you was like, "Did you wash all the dishes?
Yeah,
Did you
this is what
wash
we said to our son.
yeah,
That's what I said
just
to our
just
son.
simple stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right.
You wash it. Did you wash the dishes?
Yeah.
You took the trash out? Like just, and we ain't looking for no big wins,
Yeah.
right? We're just looking for the very simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you listening to anything that we're saying?
Right.
Right. Are the lights on?
Are the lights on? Right? Because
Yeah,
I need to
yeah,
know, man.
yeah.
I need to know. So as a father, our kids, wife, or what have you, is a representation of who we are,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It reflects the type of man you are. And so, on the one hand, it's not an ego, but it's like, man, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Am I giving them the right tools? So, yeah, I would agree with Meek on that. It's not about an ego. It's about just being proud to see progress
Right.
and growth.
Right. So, those were some really good answers, but I want to give some comfort to men, women too, but men. And when you hear this in the Bible, man is not gender sensitive. Proverbs 27 says, "The righteous man walks in integrity. Blessed are his children after him." This is the thing that when we are um, trusting God, you being a man of integrity, even if you missing it, because the word doesn't lie, God comes and he course corrects all of what, where you thought you messed up. So, we can say a lot of things about our fathers not being present, but a lot of women are like, there are not any good men. Those are all lies. There are two good men that are right here in front of me. And what I've heard you both say is that your fathers were not always emotionally present. They didn't sow and impart into you some things you wish they would have. However, there was still some places of integrity, obviously, in your fathers, because look at you. So, I just think that we should all take the approach of, you know what, no matter what it looks like. Again, I believe to see, not see to believe. So I don't have to see it. I just believe it. I've put some work into these children. So before we go any further, let's stop. Let's park right here. You have a large following on social media, and I want people to know where to follow you. And if you could also share a little bit about Meek's Vegan Pizza for us right now.
Sure, sure. Meek's Vegan Pizza. You can follow at Meek's Vegan Pizza on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. And Meek's Vegan Pizza, I found it specifically because of my son. He was the inspiration behind it. I went vegan 7 years ago, cold turkey. And at the time, my blood pressure was so high, I went to the dentist, and the dentist sent me home and said, "We can't clean your teeth." It was a routine teeth cleaning, get every 6 months. And I said, "My blood pressure is high. What are y'all talking about? It's too high. If we clean your teeth and your mouth starts bleeding, you could bleed out and die." And I'm like,
Whoa.
"This is a routine teeth cleaning. What are y'all talking about?"
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. I never worried about my weight. I was never obese or concerned about my weight growing up. So I ate whatever I wanted. And I would get up, I would eat a honey bun for breakfast, a grilled cheese sandwich, and I'd go to lunch, eat a platter of wings and, some pork chops, steak, whatever it was. I never had any regard whatsoever for my health. And then that was a wake up call when I went to that dentist. And I realized if I didn't correct this for myself, that my son was going to be on that same trajectory.
Right.
And he was going to be 35 years old and on the verge of having possibly a heart attack or a stroke. And I have friends that has happened to. And so, I said, I can't allow that to happen to him. And, I went plant based. 6 months later, blood pressure was very close to normal, was a lot closer to normal. And my dentist said, "Well, what did you do different?" And, I told him, "I've been vegan, man, and
Yeah.
keep it up because, yeah,
It was the answer, huh?
Yeah.
blood,
It
blood
was the
pressure is great."
answer.
And now my son's concern was, well, what are we going to do about pizza? Because I'm not giving up pizza. And so we went to Mod Pizza. They can make a vegan pizza there. And he thought it was terrible. He didn't like it. I thought it was all right, but he was not trying to compromise on that taste.
Right.
I took him to Blaze Pizza. He didn't like that. And we went to a few different spots that offered a vegan pizza option, and he was just throwing it in the trash. I said, all right, well, we'll figure this out at home. Started doing it at home, and he was sneaking off, giving my pizza to the dog. You know, yeah,
You
yeah,
wasn't feeling it.
man. I was finding it. Yeah, I look in the trash can. I see under the paper towels, the pizza's under there. So he's tossing my pizza out.
Oh, that's funny.
So it took about 18 months before I developed something that he actually would eat.
Okay.
And he's such a picky eater. I said, well, if he likes it, the world is going to like it.
Right.
This guy is my toughest critic.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so that's where Meek's Vegan Pizza was born. It was really because I was trying to find and develop something plant-based that my son would eat.
How long? How long have you had Meek's Vegan Pizza? How long?
4 years today.
4 years today. What?
4 years today.
Congratulations. Listen, go get some pizza today, people.
Yes.
Yes.
Even though it's going to air later. But yeah, go get it.
But you know what? Something that my husband and I can say is that every time that we've gone to Meek's Vegan Pizza, we haven't missed. And I mean, they have some
So many
cauliflower
options.
wings that we enjoy. I mean, they have a variety of food on their menu, especially pizza, but definitely go try it out. So if you are coming to Houston, Texas, if you don't go to Meek's Vegan Pizza, you're missing out. That's all I'm gonna say.
You don't care about your health.
You don't.
You don't care about your living. You don't care about living. And we need to come on a Tuesday night for the pasta. I just told my wife the other day, we need to swing by that. But okay, cool.
We have the only vegan steak night that I'm aware of.
The steak night, yeah.
We got steak night on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Surf and
steak
Turf.
night, yeah.
And yeah, we have the pasta. We also have vegan salmon. It's all 100% plant-based. There's no cholesterol in any food that we serve because it is plant-based. So that's a huge leg up on anybody else doing it.
Yeah.
And
Tuesday night, we steak night. Because we went vegan April of last year.
Yeah.
Cold turkey. One day I just said, hey, we're going vegan.
He did.
We went strong for about 9 months. Then we fell off, and so we tempered down. And now I literally just told her last night, or this morning, was it this morning?
This morning.
This morning. I said, hey, yo, we back. Listen, we need to go back because, like you, I had gotten my results from my annual checkup, and blood pressure wasn't really all that good. My blood sugar and all of it. That's why I went. I didn't like the report.
Right.
My numbers are way off. A1C numbers are way off, and so.
And this has been the generational assault.
Yes.
On Black families for the last few hundred years is the fact that a lot is rooted in slavery, and the first generation that was brought to the Americas in the slave trade were largely plant-based eaters, and they didn't make it through the Middle Passage. A lot of them died. A lot of them refused to eat what the slave masters were offering to them. They would prefer to starve themselves to death than to eat these beasts that the slave masters were trying to feed to them. And so, after that first generation, these slave masters looked at us and they were like, well, how do we save our cargo? We need to go to Africa and bring some of the stuff that they's eating over there. The okra, watermelon was not native to the Americas, yams. And they went back and they got that stuff and they were like, all right, well, as long as we mix this stuff in, we can keep them alive long enough. And then, they successively brainwashed us and started giving us the scraps.
On top of the
parts of the animal they refused to eat.
Can I get to the yams?
Yeah. Can I get to the yams? We wasn't playing about our yams.
We
man.
were not.
So that's why we got yams in the Americas now. That's why we got okra over here and other things. But
for your son, it was really for your son is how you ended up coming up with the whole Meek's vegan pizza.
Yeah, it was definitely my concern for him is that the culture American the standard American diet was going to put him on a path to some frightening outcomes, and I wanted to prevent that.
Yeah.
So that was the main motivation behind it. And there's a lot of historical reasons why we've come to this point we have in America where most people are not very healthy.
And then also, and then I'm gonna let you get to the next
Okay.
question, but
Okay.
then also just leaving that legacy, right? This is a legacy you're
This is a
building.
legacy.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah.
Go ahead, baby. I'm
So
sorry.
so no, it's okay. So what I heard is that we've been passed down a bad diet, and you
Yeah.
have made a shift. So you're passing down a good diet, because that's really all it. That's really the basis of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So thank you for that.
No problem.
And by the way, that was a really good story that you were motivated to do that, and it was because of your son. That's huge to me. Um, so my next question is, how do you lead when your child is angry, rebellious, or they even pull back? How has that been for you?
It's a challenge every time. My son is more emotionally expressive than I was.
Mm,
I think something that I absorbed from my father. My father was has always been pretty level,
mm-hmm.
doesn't really open up about much of anything, largely emotionless. I seen my dad cry one time, and that was at the funeral of his dad, who he'd only met about 5 times. And one of those 5 times, I just happened to be with him, and we just happened to be in Harlem. And my dad was like, "You know what? My dad lives on this street," and called him out the window. He stuck his head out the window, said hello, and that was the only time I saw my grandfather alive.
Wow.
And so, just learning from a young child to contain my emotions and my thought process and keep that internal. My son is way more expressive, and people a lot of times are like, "Man, I can't believe you let your son say that," or and I'm like, "Nah, I want him to be able to express himself.
Correct.
Whether it is anger,
Yeah.
sadness, whatever it might be,
Right.
I allow him to have full freedom of his own expression.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, we trying to keep it reasonable. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right.
You can't be having outbursts and cursing me out, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
trying to come to blows with me. Like,
But you want him to be in touch with his emotions.
yes, yes, I
That's
want
that's
him.
that's that's really what you're looking for,
Yes,
and what you're
100%.
allowing. And so if that gets out of hand, then that's where you step in and temper whatever that is that you're like, well, that's a little bit too much.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. So
I
the
would say
next.
that I would say the same thing. It's just I I think coming in our generation, we wanted because we couldn't say anything.
No.
We had to
yeah,
stay in a child's place.
Right.
Don't
Right.
speak unless you're spoken to.
Yeah.
Um,
That
and
part.
so we didn't express. And so I think our generation was like, okay, well, let them express themselves. They need to, talk about how they feel. And, the psychiatrists are saying that that's what we needed to do. And because we couldn't, it was like, yeah, tell me how you feel.
Yeah.
Especially, we didn't want our kids suffering in silence,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that happen to children, whether it be molestation, being violated, and they don't say anything about it.
right,
Right.
So
Right.
me having a daughter for the first time, I'm
hmm,
like, no, you need to let me know if something's going on
right,
with you. And so we wanted to pull out that expression, and we pulled out a lot, and they
Yeah.
felt like they could say just about
Whatever
anything.
they wanted.
So now that's when the boundaries had to be established about respect.
Right.
And but I'm with Meek on that. I want you to express yourself, but respect always has to be, the foundation of how you express to anyone, not just to me, but anyone
Anyone.
at your job. So we're talking about how you express yourself on the job.
Right.
You can't just go off on your boss um, and think that's okay.
Correct.
How do you express yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I really wanted to impart into my kids about, well, how do you do that? So,
Well, this is a good segue to intersect our Love and Truth podcast journal. Just what we're talking about right now. There are some people that don't know how to create a safe space. Our journal teaches you how to create a safe space, and some of us don't even know what a safe space is. But oftentimes, even with our children, we have to create a safe space for them to be able to sit down and talk to us and tell us what's on their hearts. When we see our children, changing, when your child is, very exuberant and they love to talk, they're super social, and then they shut down. Well, we know that something has happened. This journal will help you navigate through that and be able to ask questions, not just to your child, but to yourself. So you should see it coming across the screen right now, but it's going to be loveandtruthjournal.com. Go ahead and order your copy today. Now, I want to ask another question that's not on here before we dive in. And James, let me start with you. Father's Day is not celebrated like Mother's Day is celebrated. We all know that. It's been like that for a very long time. What is your take on that?
Yeah, it's often a running joke about Father's Day, and Kroger's, the parking lots in our field with tents, right? And I was having this conversation at work a few weeks ago. I was doing a town hall, and I was bringing it up,
Yeah.
and everybody agrees that it's just not the same energy around Father's Day.
No, it's not.
And I think part of that is we got to take responsibility for that too, because we often say, "Well, I don't need all of that. I'm good." We oftentimes have not expressed the emotion or the vulnerability that what we want until it gets to a breaking point.
Right.
That we want to be appreciated and valued, but that's sometimes seems like it's synonymous with being soft and weak, and it's a feminine trait, right?
Yeah.
You're being sensitive. So I think part of it is that over years, we just haven't really made it known that like we do appreciate. We don't just want socks, you know what I mean, or a tie.
Or a
Nobody
tie.
wear ties anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we should honor the men on the same level as we do with the women. And that's not taken away from the contributions of, there's a lot of single women out there, single parents, single mothers, I should say. But here, Meek is a single father, right? So I don't think we talk about those stories enough.
We don't.
So
We don't. What do you want to say about why we don't really celebrate Father's Day as we do Mother's Day?
I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. I think that most fathers, or maybe I'm speaking for myself, I think a holiday for us looks like being left alone.
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
because we have so many things that we're responsible for,
right.
keeping the lights on, making sure there's food on the table, just
Gotcha.
so much stress that I think a lot of dads are just cool with, hey man, all right, just give me the tie and leave me alone.
Okay. Okay.
So I think that has a lot to do with it historically. But now
Yeah.
that I believe that this generation of fathers is more involved than ever, I think it's time for it to evolve. I think
Yes.
we need to go out and do some adventurous things that dads would find fun, whether it be sports related or, adventure related. I think we can start incorporating more of that into Father's Day now.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
That's good. I want to kind of shift here, and the shift is still dealing with fatherhood unfiltered. But James, you have bonus children. We don't say stepchildren because it just has such a negative connotation. Words matter. It's like you stepping on someone, so we say bonus. I even say my bonus mom. I don't say mother-in-law. Like I don't. But anyway, so you, when you in your first marriage, you had a bonus son, and tell me what were some of the or what were some of the challenges that you had being a bonus father?
I think for me, early on, the chat number one, I had made a commitment
Okay.
early on. Like I knew what I was stepping into. My son was only 3 when he and his mom and I got together, so 3 years old. So I think the early challenges were centered around how his mother engaged with the dad. I was the bonus dad that I took him because I felt like it was important that you had a relationship with your biological father. So oftentimes I'm taking him to go see he wasn't coming to pick him up.
Yeah.
I would take him to go see his dad, his biological father, right? And when he got over there and it wasn't the life that he was living with me, he was like, I'm ready to come home. I would go back and pick him up, right? Because I'm going to force you to stay in a situation,
Right.
but I still think it's important. So I think for me, the only thing that was a challenge for me was I don't think that effort, and not that I was looking for it, was appreciated or valued.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily saying from him because he was a kid, but even as an adult looking back on it,
Yeah.
I would expect that has some type of weight. But just dealing with the mother at the time, I think that was taken for granted, and
Got
I
it.
felt being taken for granted because not many dudes are going to step up and take care of somebody else's kid
Absolutely
the
not.
way I did.
Absolutely not.
In fact, he and I had to have a couple of conversations like, yo, bro, I don't really, I don't need, he doesn't need your help
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
He just wants you to be available and present when he's there. So that was really it.
Okay. So, Meek, as a single father for you, what has been some of the struggles just being a single father?
Man, it's a lot. Dating and relationships, for instance, I have had relationships with women who've had children, women who haven't had children, and sometimes, you know, the children may not get along, and that causes friction in a relationship, and those relationships go away as a result. I'm currently engaged now, and
Congrats,
Congratulations.
thank you,
congrats.
thank you, thank you. And so, the qualities I was looking for in a life partner was somebody who's going to be nurturing, not only to me but to my child as well. And so my son, will have a bonus mom in the next year or so.
Okay.
We've been looking at wedding venues. I just got back from Cabo last week, looking at some possibilities down there.
Okay.
But it is difficult when asking someone who is not the biological mother or father of your child to assume the responsibilities of a parent.
Yeah.
That can be a challenge, and it's a very sensitive area. Now, me as a father, I didn't necessarily want somebody who was going to come in and just be like, I'm his mom,
Right, right.
Correct.
because his mother is living.
Correct.
He sees her every other weekend, and that's always going to be his mother. So that's not what I wanted. I just need somebody who's going to support me,
Yes.
and when I'm not able to do what needs to be done, will be willing to make sure that my son is good as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's good. That's a good approach, and I think that that's fair.
Yeah.
And just speaking into that, I know we're on fatherhood, but as coming in, assuming the position of being a bonus mom, I don't think that any woman should take the position of coming in. I'm going to take your mother's place because that's no, you are what you are. You're the bonus mom, and especially if there's a mom there, and that's another subject that we're going to have to tackle later. But my next question is going to be, what do you want your children to say about you when you're no longer here?
When I'm no longer here, I'm
Well, your
hoping
child, I'm sorry, right now.
my child right now,
Probably will have children, but
at first I was not actually interested in having more children. I was like,
Good.
yeah, because I looked at it as, again, checking my own ego. I think some people get out and they want to replicate because they're like, I got little me's running around, and I
Little Meeks.
yeah, yeah, I got little me's running around and doing this and all the stuff that I didn't get to do. I taught them how to do, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't uh, introducing that to the world irresponsibly.
okay.
So I likely will have more children in the future. Um, but you know, going back to, I'm sorry, could
What,
you,
yeah, yeah. What when you're no longer here, what
when
would
I'm
you
no
want
longer here?
your child to say about his father?
I would like my child to say that my father was 100% honest and kept it real about everything. And because I think the truth is the only thing that will set anybody free.
Mm.
It'll set our family free. It'll
Yes.
set anybody free. And so that my dad was a truth teller, whether it hurt or not. And because of his truth telling, it changed the trajectory of my life and my family's life.
Okay. Okay. All right, Mr. Nelson.
I'm gonna go with Meek on that. Just that I was solid, and that I was honest and truthful about life. You know, the love that I had for them. That I showed up whenever they needed me, whether we agreed or disagreed, doesn't really matter. Um, and that I was always there to support in whatever way they needed. And in some cases, may not even the way they wanted it, but I was there, you know? So I think that's important for me, that legacy of honesty and truthfulness and
Yeah.
just transparency.
Yeah.
Like that I was transparent. Like I kept it a buck with both of our, I got two bonus sons,
Right.
but I give it straight,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I'm not trying to emasculate or make them feel like my ego. No, I'm
Right.
trying to help you. I'm trying to give you the game on how you need to survive and navigate in this world. So
Okay.
that's it.
So this next question has a lot to do with, because I know for our generation, our parents didn't often say "I'm sorry" or sit us down and tell us if they said no. Well, why are you telling me no? Don't have sex. Well, why not?
Hmm.
Tell me something because I said so. It's not gonna work though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because in all you're getting, get an understanding. Your kids need to understand. Okay. So, what have you learned to say now that you didn't say before?
Ooh, that's a great question. Again, it goes back to understanding the rationale behind the answers that I'm giving to my son. And that's something that was vitally missing. Like you said, my mom was a disciplinarian, and it was just like, she didn't even have to say nothing. It was that look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about to happen because you're gonna get this look, and then what comes after the look
You
is,
know,
Yeah.
you
yeah,
know what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
yeah, you might not be on this earth to know what's going to happen next. You might be laid out. And so, making sure my son understands the rationale and the reasoning behind the things that I tell him, and that's critical for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that too because my kids know that you're gonna get an explanation.
All right.
You're gonna get the back. You're gonna get the understanding of why. Um, what are some of the dangers in making certain decisions. You're gonna be fully knowledgeable. Now you can do whatever you want to do, and you can choose to take this advice or not. But you're gonna understand why I'm taking a position that I'm taking
Okay.
about it. But again, it's your life. You got to make your call. But here's what I've said to my kids. Now, once you do that, you got to live with whatever that decision is, whatever it is, right? You got to live with it and just know as you're making decisions, they're yours and you can't blame anybody. You can't blame me, your mama, the world. It's your decision. So learn to live with your decisions.
Okay. That's good. We didn't get to jump into this, and so we know we need to have you back because there's so much more about you that we need to cover. But where can they find your book, I Am a Black Man?
Yeah, you can purchase it on Amazon. If you type in "I'm a Black Man," Demetrius Walker, it comes up on Amazon. And lots of people who read the book told me that it helped them to overcome certain challenges they had in their lives with their parents. And so I think it's a good read.
Okay.
I've been working on several other books actually for a while. I have incomplete that I'm hoping to get done,
Okay.
but Yeah, I'm a black man. The evolution of a dangerous Negro is the rest of the title.
Okay.
And there's a whole story behind that as well. I know we don't have time to get into it today.
Well, we're gonna
We
have
need to
you
come
back
back.
because we need to be able to hear that, because if it's helping others, we want to be helped too. Okay.
Yeah.
So, first of all, we want to thank you guys for showing up for this episode. We pray that it blessed you. Again, thank you, Meek. Thank you, Mr. James Nelson, my husband. That's
Yeah.
my everything. Thank you for the wisdom you guys have given, and I just hope that what people have heard, because just sitting here, it blessed me. We want you, don't forget to go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, share, and also don't forget to walk in love. Don't forget to find out what the truth is, because the truth will set you free. Until next time, peace.
Peace.